What the? Ah!
Oh my god.
Your drone is freaking out as soon as you arm it. Here are all the reasons and how to fix them. But first, let me call to my quadcopter expert. Hey Neil.
So you got people with their drones freaking out, don't know what to do about it. Here's a couple things they need to check. Got to check that your props are on right, your motors are going the right direction, got to make sure your board orientation is correct, and maybe run through the motor wizard. If not, very scary things can happen.
Here is a short version of what you need to do.
Oh, fuck!
Basically, you just need to check that the correct type of props are on the correct motors. Then you need to check that the board alignment is correct. Then check if this motor direction switch matches your expectations. Don't forget about some safety for your eyes, because it's gonna be some spinning parts in front of your face, even though these are not as dangerous as props. With the props off, check the motor order. Some people call it motor mapping. And check the motor spinning direction. To avoid your drone freaking out and breaking props, at the very end of the video there is a quick procedure how you can check your drone with props off. And if these steps don't help, you gotta do them again, because for 99% of cases there is a user error, even for experienced people. Now a little bit longer version for less experienced people. The first and the easiest thing to check is your propellers. As most of you know, there are two types of propellers. The clockwise propeller and the counterclockwise propeller. And if you have a set of propellers in a bag like this, usually there are two of each type inside. But don't blindly assume it's always like this, and always double check, because they can mess it up at the manufacturer, and it happened before. If you don't know how to tell which propeller is clockwise, which is counterclockwise, and which way to put it on, like this or upside down, usually there is an arrow to help you, but there are plenty of videos about this topic. I will leave a link to some of them in the description. Check it out, but please, after you put like and subscribe under this video, because this guy is not messing around.
Like and subscribe.
If it's clockwise or counterclockwise depends on the settings of your drone, and it's very easy to check in Betaflight configurator, so plug it in with USB, not with a battery, just USB. Open Motors tab. And just follow this little diagram. You see, in my case, this diagonal is counterclockwise propellers and this diagonal is clockwise propellers. We're gonna talk about this toggle a little bit later, so don't change it and leave as you have it now. You have double and triple checked that the correct propellers are on the correct spots, but the drone is still freaking out. For further investigation and for safety, you have to take all the props off your drone. Now, with the props off, we're gonna perform a few steps to fix your drone. Maybe you won't need all of these steps, but anyways, don't rush yet to put the props back on, because at the end of the video there is a very quick procedure how to check your drone with a battery but without props. Let's check your quadcopter flight controller alignment. Plug in USB and open setup page. The goal of this exercise is to explain to Betaflight how did you mount your flight controller on your drone. Is it like vertical like this? Maybe it's upside down? Maybe it's like yaw 180 degrees? So the 3D picture on the setup page should be doing the same moves as your real drone, you see? It's not doing anything. Well, time to panic. This 3D picture works only if you have accelerometer activated. And most of us FPV pilots don't use accelerometer, so it could be just off on your drone. No problem. Open configuration tab, activate accelerometer and click save and reboot. After you do so, you might get a warning that your accelerometer is enabled but not calibrated. Not a big deal, we're gonna fix it right away. If you happen to have a very weird drone with a flight controller mounted vertically like this, then calibration is a little tricky, because you have to calibrate accelerometer when your board is flat. So in this weird drone case, you will have to calibrate accelerometer while you put your drone on a side. 8 or 9 years in this hobby, I don't remember seeing a single drone with a flight controller mounted vertically. But maybe I'm missing some cool stuff. Let me know down in the comments. But anyways, for most of people, you can calibrate your drone just flat on the table, and especially if you're not going to use like GPS or some angle modes where you need to precisely calibrate accelerometer. So in our case, you can just put flat on the table and click calibrate accelerometer. Then put your drone facing away from you. Click reset Z-axis because it will also put the 3D picture facing away from you. And now you can start checking if the drone board alignment is correct. You see, in my case, it is correct. Make sure you check all the axes, yaw, pitch, and roll. If you see something like this, then you have to fix it. The most typical case for that is you mounted your flight controller upside down. In this case, just open Configuration tab, and here for the roll degrees, just put 180. And click Save and Reboot. Do not forget to give a few seconds for your drone to just sit on the table to calibrate gyro. Otherwise, the setup page 3D picture won't work correctly. The other typical scenario, if you mounted your board, rotated yaw 180 or 90 degrees, then of course just find yaw and put here 90 or 180, or it could be like minus 90 depending on how exactly you rotated your flight controller. Another typical case, if it's yaw 180 and also upside down, in this case you can just use pitch 180. If you have to do this step, I know it is not super easy, but a few trial and errors and you'll get it. Just at the very end, make sure that the 3D picture moves the same way as your real drone. Honestly, a few years ago, I wanted to implement a little wizard in Betaflight configurator to solve these board alignment problems for the users, but then I got stuck with implementing the motor remapping and motor direction dialog. Then I got stuck with implementing the presets page, and now my schedule being pretty rough because I just became father for the second time in my life. So if you are a developer that don't know how to help Betaflight, this would be a very nice contribution. After that, if you're planning to fly only in acro mode, don't forget to open configuration and disable accelerometer. Well, unless you want to fly GPS or some sort of angle modes. The next few steps are way easier, so let's get through very quick. Motor stop. This little weird toggle motor direction is reversed. What the heck is that? This little toggle tells to the flight controller your intention of the props and motor's direction. The intention means it does not actually change your props, of course, otherwise it would be pretty funny, and it also doesn't actually change your motor spinning direction. It only reflects your desire for your configuration. So if you like to fly with the front props spinning out, then you have to use this toggle. If you like front props to spin in, then you leave it like this off. And if you change this toggle, don't forget that after this you will have to put your props in a different way following this diagram. I think most of people should be flying props spinning out because it helps a little bit to avoid sucking in the branches and the little leaves and gates that you might hit, but this really doesn't matter a lot. The next step is motor order. It is important because your flight controller has to know in which order did you solder your motors to your flight controller. Of course, you didn't solder motors directly to your flight controller, but you know what I mean. So make sure there are no props on the drone and plug in the battery. Then open Reorder Motors little dialog, accept the risks, and click Start. And then your drone will start pulsing one of the motors. See, in this case it's this one, and that's why I click on this motor. The next is pulsing this motor, and so I'm clicking on this motor. Next is this one, so I'm clicking on this one, and the next is this one, I'm clicking on this one. After this, you can double check the order by clicking on the motors without releasing the mouse button, so like this for example. You see, the mouse button is pushed and this motor is spinning. See, motor keeps spinning, then this motor keeps spinning, this motor keeps spinning, and everything good. In some of the videos, I've seen people doing this. Like, this is not how you verify. You do this while you select the motors, but to verify after you selected all of these motors, you have to like click and keep pushing, and that's how I made this dialog. Then just save or start over if something is wrong. This dialog is also a good way to verify that all of your motors are spinning and also spinning separately, which is important. For example, if this dialog shows that your front left motor is not spinning, then something could be physically wrong with the wiring in your drone, or maybe you just flashed the wrong target. It also could be that instead of spinning one motor, it spins two. In this case, most likely you bend the little pins inside of the plugs, either on flight controller or ESC. This is pretty dangerous, and in this case you need to straighten them up with the tiny little tweezers and be very careful when you insert the harness. If you don't have plugs between flight controller and ESC, then most likely you need to redo the soldering between them, because if two motors are spinning when you ask to spin one, then basically it means that two ESCs are listening to one pin on your flight controller. You need to fix it either way. Sort of the final step is to check your motor direction. In the medieval ages you had to use a separate program for that, but since Betaflight 4.3 you can use these little neat buttons in most of the cases. You just need to make sure that your ESC supports D-shot. And this is very important, because if your ESC does not support D-shot, it is dangerous to even switch to D-shot right here, because it can spin your motors full throttle right away if your ESC does not support D-shot. So in this step we are making sure that the spinning direction of each of the motors matching with this diagram. Very easy. If your ESC supports D-shot, then you just set it up here, click save and reboot, and then click motor direction. Here you accept the risks and then select wizard or individually. Most of people should be using wizard because it's a little bit more comfortable. Back in the days when I made this dialog, I think it would be a nice idea to have like an option for individually where it doesn't reset all the motors, and you know, it's a little bit more flexible, but just I don't think anyone using it. So I use always wizard, and I've seen people using only wizard, so we're gonna use wizard now. Wizard resets the spinning direction for all the motors inside the ESC settings. So when you click Start Spin Motors, all the motors will be spinning in their default direction, so you have to verify every motor. Let's see. So all the motors are slowly spinning now, and I can touch them and see which motor is spinning in the wrong direction looking here at this diagram. Let's see. Motor 1 is correct. Motor 2 is not correct, clicking this button. Then motor 4 is also not correct, clicking this button and it's changing the direction. And motor 3 is correct. After this, I like to check the diagonal motors because they should be spinning in the same direction. So this diagonal spinning this way, correct, and this diagonal spinning the opposite way, correct. So now I can click Stop Motors. To address some of the concerns from the comments under other videos, I can assure you that this dialog actually changes the settings inside of the ESC firmware. In Betaflight 4.3.0, this dialog had a sad bug, and it could spin all of the motors full throttle right away without even notifying user. This bug supposed to be fixed in Betaflight 4.3.1, but regardless of this bug, you never should be using these dialogs if you have your props on. You shouldn't even open this tab if you have props on and your battery is plugged in. Also, on the receivers tab, it is worth checking that throttle is throttle, yaw is yaw, pitch is pitch, and roll is roll, and they're all moving in the correct direction. It doesn't require any remapping or reversing. If you need a speedrun of how to set up Betaflight from scratch, I got a video, link in the description. This is a weird preview for this video. Now check out this method that can verify that your drone is healthy for most of the cases without putting your props on. Don't forget about some safety for your eyes, because it's gonna be some spinning parts in front of your face, even though these are not as dangerous as props. Disconnect Betaflight configurator and unplug the cable. Put your battery on and plug it in. If your drone is top-mounted battery, then you might want to put something under it, for example DJI goggles battery. Awesome application, isn't it? Or maybe something even like a little sponge to avoid extra vibrations with the table. Then it's very simple, you arm your drone and try to input some yaw without throttle and see if the drone follows it. It won't follow it precisely, but it also shouldn't be doing that. Like, this is bad. You see, I didn't even do anything, it's just freaked out and disarmed. But in general, it should follow it pretty good, at least try. And if you do it too sharp, then it will disarm, and this is normal, like this. See, it disarmed by itself. The reason it disarmed itself sometimes in these cases is because flight controller detects that the difference between desired and actual yaw angle velocity is way bigger than it should be. And of course it will be the case if you do very sharp stick yaw move without the props, because without the props the motors just don't have enough authority to turn your drone. It's enough for a little bit, but that's it. So this is a safety feature, don't turn it off, even though you can do it in CLI, because one day it can save someone. The next simple step is to arm your drone and give a little bit of throttle and see if your quad is shaking like crazy. We're good. The next step is to take your drone in the hand and arm it. Without any throttle, do a sharp roll move like this with your hands. And what you should be feeling is the air around these left motors, because the moment you roll it to the left, these motors should be spinning a little bit faster while you're doing this. You can either hear these motors or try to feel the air around them. This motor and this motor. Then you do the same with the pitch back, and when you pitch back, the moment you pitch back, the two rear motors should be spinning a little bit faster because they will be trying to compensate this sudden pitch back move. And then you sort of like feel the air around it. It should be a little bit more wind. Cool. And then you can pitch forward and feel the air around forward motors. And then pitch it to the roll it to the right and feel the air around these motors. And we're good. Make sure you don't touch these motors, because they will be spinning pretty fast during this experiment and they can burn your poor little fingers in a matter of a second. Please pay attention, this is important. When you move your stick to the left, then the right motors will be spinning faster, but when you actually take your quad in your hand and move your quad to the left, then the left motors will be spinning faster because the quad will try to fight this move. And this is the difference. Also, it is interesting that when you tilt your quad to the left, then these motors will be spinning faster only during your tilting. But when you move your roll stick to the left, then these motors will be spinning faster always until you release the stick. Also, if your motors are slowly ramping up, when you arm it without the props is 100% fine. If you're brave enough to touch the motors while they're spinning, of course without throttle and without props, you can do that, but please be very careful. You can check the spinning direction. Also, you can check if your motors are in the good shape, well, sort of. While they're spinning with zero throttle, you can take something like a pen and touch the bell and the shaft, and then feel if it's sort of smooth or it's like. Also, you can check for extra motor noise if you just grab the tip of the arm like this, not the motor, just the tip of the arm. And then arm your drone and start slowly moving throttle up and trying to feel the vibrations with your fingers. And sometimes the vibrations are so bad that you can feel your bone is vibrating, even a little bit painful. And then in this case, one of your motors or a few might need a replacement. A reminder that all these steps don't guarantee that your drone will be good when you put props on, but they certainly help to catch the errors on the early stage before you break your props. This is basically it, almost all of the reasons why your drone might freak out as soon as you arm it or as soon as you give a little bit of stick input. Sometimes your drone is able to hover, but it's doing sort of weird noises like this. And as soon as you give a little bit more throttle, it just takes off with the noises of angry octopus, like. Sometimes the vibrations are so strong that it engages the safety feature and your drone disarms almost immediately. Honestly, this is a different topic, but very quick. Most of the cases like this, you have a wobbly frame, so you gotta be checking your frame, trying to bend it like this, trying to see if your arms are moving, trying to check all your motors are sitting tight, trying to move your flight controller inside of the frame, see if it's sitting tight, you need to double check that you have metal nuts locking the stack screws and the stack screws are not moving inside of the frame. You also gotta check that nothing is bashing your flight controller, for example, something like UFL antenna or some wires. You gotta check that your antenna is sitting tight and not dangling. In some very rare cases, you can try to open PID tuning tab and open filter settings, and then scroll down, and then there's dynamic notch filter. You can try to bump up the notch count, and then you can try to move the minimum frequency from 200 to something like 100. But this is the last resort that basically hides your hardware problems with the software filters. You can also try to bump down the D gains a little bit and also P and I gains a little bit, but really the Blackbox debugging is the ultimate solution for these problems. And I have a very detailed video of how to record Blackboxes, and link will be of course in the description. I planned this video to be 7 minutes long and now it's 20 minutes already and we are talking about tuning. This has to be stopped. See you in the next video, if I am not late.
I think that we've all had enough. Keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the keys quiet, yeah. We will build the bride, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. You got me like, I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong.
And then I go around the corner and...
Leave a comment who was the most convincing, including the guys from the very beginning.